on the News Channel 5 network. This is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris here, coming to you live and direct on a Tuesday from the News Channel 5 studios downtown. We've got a great show on tap for you. We'll open up the phone lines. If you want to join in the conversation, we'll get the number up there, 737-7587. But there's a lot of different elements to what we're dealing with in this pandemic, okay? And one part of it, I think, is what we've seen happening with seniors and those who are most vulnerable to the virus, and how we plan for the future and how we deal with nursing homes, assisted living, or if they're living at home. All those types of things takes on added meaning. It's always an issue that we've talked about on this show with the guests that we're about to be joined by, but I think it's taken on additional significance with what we're dealing with right now. So let's get right to it. With us this morning is Barbara McGinnis, of course, of Takis McGinnis, elder law attorneys, and they do a fantastic job, having been on this show many times before. Good morning to you, Barbara. How are you?
Good morning, Nick. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. How's Tim holding up in all this?
We're all healthy and doing just fine. We're all still working from home because mostly just out of precaution, right?
Yeah.
That we're not ready to go back into the office just yet. Our clients are almost exclusively older adults. They're not ready to come back into the office yet. But on a real positive note, we do have a plan for going back into the office. Our new office building that it's been under construction for about a year will sort of coincidentally be ready for occupancy about the 1st of July. And so lots of great things. You know, a lot of people talk about they put up plexiglass barriers and they're doing various things to make their office work safer. We built a new building, right? So people have their own office space, larger offices that can accommodate people and maintain social distancing. So new ventilation system, lots of light and air, but a lot of safety precautions will go into place. So that'll be in July. We'll be back in the office ready to offer in-face or virtual consults with clients.
I think that's awesome. And I think it's great that you've continued to work with clients throughout all of this. And really, it's good we're having you on now. We should have had you on sooner even, considering what we're dealing with here. Because, all right, you think that, this is something that people need to think about all the time until the pandemic hit. Now it's even more significant. Most of your clients are seniors. What have you seen? What have you learned at this point? And what kind of concerns and issues are you dealing with your clients because of this virus right now?
In the scheme of things across the nation, Tennessee has been relatively lightly impacted. Not to make light of anyone who's lost their life, certainly, but we're not a New York or New Jersey or Philadelphia kind of environment. So, if you look at a map of the United States to see where people have been most significantly impacted, Tennessee is not one of those hot spots, and we're very grateful for that. One of the biggest issues for our families and our clients of folks that live in long-term care facilities is the social isolation of not being able to visit their family members.
Right.
It's incredibly sad. I go see my mom in a nursing home, and there's a whole bunch of people sitting around peeping through the windows looking at their loved one. I appreciate when the staff makes the accommodations to let us do that and to help folks FaceTime, but it's not the same as touching your mom or being able to for them to be able to feel the hugs. And it goes beyond the social isolation. A lot of residents of those long-term care facilities get part of their care actually provided by family members. And that puts an additional burden on the staff when those folks aren't there. I had a nurse the other day tell me on the phone, believe it or not, it's hard on us too. We appreciate it when families are visiting and they can help with their family members. So those are some of the biggest challenges and heartaches that I think our families are having. Of course, we did have some residents in the facility in Gallatin that was so severely impacted a couple of months ago. That was just a crazy time of relocating folks, moving out of the Gallatin Center for Rehab and Wellness and to the hospital and back again. So that was particularly hard as well. That was a hard time. Trying to navigate addiction.
I'm glad. Let me ask you this, because that you brought that up. I was going to ask you if you had any clients that were there, and there have been. And you're right about the state of Tennessee. We've been fortunate to that degree, but there have been some incidents at some of the nursing facilities. And I'm wondering, from your point of view as an attorney in all this, a couple of points you can give folks. One, if someone's in a scenario now where they have to look to find a place for their elderly loved one, you want to avoid a situation like that. There's that. And, just wondering, how do you go about choosing? What should they look for? What do you do? I suppose some of these facilities, they try to do everything right, and sometimes things can get in. Other facilities, sometimes you wonder, was everything done right, and could it have been done better?
Exactly.
So how do you decide? What advice would you give someone that's dealing with this right now?
Well, all of the usual and customary factors that you would consider replacement: insurance contracts, proximity to your home for visitation purposes, staffing ratios. You can use the Medicare Compare websites to help with certain things, like give you an idea about staffing. But one thing that they have added to the Nursing Home Compare website is some information about COVID, so you can get an idea. The other thing you can do is, if you're considering placement in a particular facility, go to their actual website, because every one of them now have a dashboard on their website that indicates how many active cases of COVID, how many have they had, not just for residents, but for staff members. So, like last night, as I was preparing for this, I looked up the facility where my mom lives, and you can see right across the board how many people currently are infected, have been. And so that gives you some. It's terrible that they had to mandate transparency, but it's there now. We have that information now. So I would certainly look at that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. By the way, is that just in Tennessee, or would you imagine that most states have that kind of transparency? I don't know if you know beyond that or not.
Well, I do not believe it was a Tennessee rule. I believe
it's more national.
Came from CMS.
Okay.
Yes, I believe it is a national thing now.
Okay, because as you know, I have parents in a facility like that as well, and I need to check. As far as I know, they haven't had it. They're in Boise, which is another state that hasn't been hit hard.
Right.
But okay, listen, before we take our first break, Ricky's already called in, so we have a phone call for you. Let's take that real quick, Barbara, and we'll go to Ricky. Ricky, good morning. Do you have a question or comment, Ricky?
Yes, I got a couple of questions.
Okay.
If somebody ends up, if they're sick or something like that, and they end up in a nursing home, if they stay there permanently, do they lose all the money they got saved up in their bank that's connected to their sons or something like that?
Okay.
Like if you got two separate accounts, you got the same account, but both checks are going into the same account. So is the son going to lose his money that he's got in there also if his mom goes to the nursing home?
Okay. And did you have another question also?
Yeah. This COVID-19, when you go in they stick, that stuff up your nose to check.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought they could do it out of blood work,
Yeah, I can answer that real quick. The blood work is to test for antibodies, to see if you've had it and recovered and you have antibodies in your system. But to test to see if you're actively infected with COVID, they do that with the same kind of flu swab up into your nasal membrane to swab up there. Now, that's a common question we get a lot of times for these assisted living facilities and nursing homes, Barbara, just how it's paid. A lot of people think Medicare covers it or Medicaid covers it, and that's not the case if you have assets, right?
That is not the case if you have assets. Assets long-term care, whether it's nursing home or assisted living care, it's a business, and they are providing a service, and they just want to be paid for their service. Sure. So if you have assets, you're going to be using your private funds to pay your income, your savings, perhaps. If you have long-term care insurance, you can tap into that, but you will be using your resources most likely. It does not mean when you're having a joint account. You got to remember, the nursing home does not take control of a resident's finances, not unless they've been given some type of rep payee status through Social Security or something like that. But you will be writing checks from that joint account to cover your mother's care at the facility. When it comes time to look at TennCare, and there are ways that we can help families navigate the rules of TennCare to restructure assets according to the rules that allows for perhaps a more an accelerated benefit, so to speak. The money that's in a joint account that belongs all to your mom, which is not uncommon, that an older adult would have a child on an account with them as joint owners, but all the money in the account belongs to the older adult. The child may just be there for convenience sake. Well, that's still all mom's money. But if you're truly, like you're talking about, a joint account where everybody's income is going into this account, we would pull out the money that belongs to you, and because you can prove that. You can prove that your income has been deposited in that account as well, and that's your money. So we have to separate those funds. And I would recommend that you start doing that now, perhaps getting a separate account and start dividing those two sources of assets, so that if it ever becomes time to apply for TennCare, it would be easier for you to make those distinctions.
Yeah, so there's no confusion. That's a really good point. Listen, Barbara, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we can talk more about that and how the payment plans and how you get onto TennCare once you run out of money or Medicaid and applying for that. Also, Virginia's called in, a couple other callers. They're on hold. They'll wait through the break, and we'll get to them with calls for Barbara McGinnis right after this. Stay with us. We'll be right back.